2025, year of our Lord, as Steve Bannon would say, and we are here live on the Joe Hoff Show. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you for being here. Thank you for supporting our sponsors. Thank you for supporting the Joe Hoff Show and all around us. Really appreciate it. Really appreciate you being here. We've got another great show. Have just continue to have just fantastic guests, and I'm really thrilled about that. And continuing to throw the truth out there and smash those dishonest people that are in this country and their lies. And maybe some of these people aren't dishonest; they've just lied. And for the most part, they're honest people. But let's make it. Let's keep it 100% honest, okay? Let's do that, and that's what we're going to do. We're gonna lay it all out, and that's why we get attacked, because the enemy of the truth is lies and the devil. And we are the truth, and we will continue to point out the devil and what it is doing today and how it is trying to destroy this country. And by God, I think it came really, really close. Again, you go back, look at the Biden administration. I'm telling you what, if you're a Democrat, you tell me one good thing that the Biden administration did, especially for the long-term going concern of this country. I believe everything they did was to destroy this country from the inside out, and they were doing it. And we had a miracle, and that miracle was a tip of an ear that missed President Trump's head by just basically a quarter inch. And now instead of going to a civil war, we're going to Mars. And so I saw a great little picture of that. It hits Trump straight on, we're going civil war. It hits him to the side and nicks his ear, we're going to Mars. And so that's exciting. A lot of great stuff happening. And the left is losing their minds. They've lost their minds. They are supporting the corruption like never before, and it's really bad. So I've got a couple clips that are going to just lay this out for you. They're great. We're winning. We are crushing them. We crushed them back in the last 4 years as well. We were the ones. It was us. It was the Gateway Pundit, JoeHoff.com, all these various sites, Lindell TV, Conservative Daily. Everybody was out there sharing the truth. And that's where the people went, because they didn't trust these liars. They didn't trust CNN. They didn't trust MSNBC. And that's why their numbers are horrible right now. And without government money propping them up, communist fascist money pushing them to push lies, they're non-existent, and they will fail, and we will grow like never before once we get it fixed that conservatives can no longer have their advertisers targeted and disparaged and attacked by this far left, by this government, is what we're learning. So anyways, the deep state's in a terrible panic. Here's a clip that I saw overnight. The deep state is starting to destroy records, and it's let's pray to God that we get this fixed immediately. Anyways, here's a clip on that. Let's start with that today.
You maybe give us a closer in perspective as to what the subversion is happening inside of the building right now. I mean, it's obviously you're going to have like an antibody reaction to somebody
Absolutely.
like Cash.
I'll give you a big one that I heard recently, which was already passed on, is that there are FBI servers that are sort of standalone, and people inside the FBI have been working night and day to destroy files on these servers. And I was told that once these files are destroyed, the way they are set up, that even Elon Musk could not restore them. So that's happening right now as we speak. That's happening with Kash Patel being the director. It was happening before he got there. And so that subversion, like I said, started immediately. And it's only going to continue. These people, and here's another example. I was told last week, right out of the gates, Kash Patel came out and said 1,500 people, 500, you're going to Alabama. You're still going to be headquarters personnel. You're going to Alabama. 1,000 of you, you're going out to the field. He said this long before the election, even, that he said if he was in charge, he would say, let cops be cops. And so go out and be cops. Already people are saying, we are not going to comply with that. We are going to make it seem as if we transferred. We're going to do what they call, quote unquote, paper transfers. And we're not going to obey these lawful orders. I don't know if you heard Stephen Miller in the last few days. He came out and has given a great civics lesson on Article 2 of the Constitution. The FBI falls under the executive branch, and you have these career bureaucrats who say, nope, we answer to no one. Well, hopefully that's going to change, and I think under Kash Patel and Dan Bongino leadership, I think it will. But they've got to root out this subversion first.
Somebody who works inside of the West Wing came up to us in a private setting when we were in D.C. and said, "You would not would not believe the number of times that my office has to be swept for bugs."
It's crazy.
And inside the White House has to be swept by agencies to figure out if there's electronic monitoring that's happening to us on a daily basis. It's crazy. Any idea what's on the servers that's so damning that it has to be siloed into such a secure facility with the lack of redundancy or capacity for anybody to go through and sort of from like digital forensics, right? You can uncover most data that's deleted, you can uncover it in some capacity. So somebody's worked very hard to make sure that this data that you're talking about can be deleted and destroyed forever. Any idea what it is?
No idea on what it is. I can only speculate, but you mentioned the Epstein list. I'd imagine it's cases like that. It's intel cases that are very siloed, very secretive. And I'm sure there's probably even information regarding the FBI's own subversive measures against Americans, against American politicians, for instance. We learned over the last few days that the Oval Office was bugged, and they took out the Resolute desk to inspect it more. Who's doing that type of thing, Benny? It's going to be, if they're operating at all as they should be, it's going to be the FBI, because they're the domestic agency. Now, is it beyond the CIA or NSA playing a role? No, not at all, because I think all of these agencies at this point do not have the best interest of the American public in mind. That's something that the Trump administration is trying to change, but it's going to be an uphill battle, I believe, for the entire.
Your jaw keeps hitting the floor. This country has been so corrupted. They prevented President Trump from looking at any of this last time. Thank the Lord Jesus for Elon Musk. The mainstream media can go to hell, and we've got evidence that most Americans feel that way as well. But this is outrageous. That's just the FBI and the DOJ and the corrupt deep state there. But the deep state runs deep. It's across the board in multiple entities. It's the bureaucracy that lives on its own. And here's President Trump talking about what Elon did this past weekend. Elon asked all government workers to send a note of 5 bullets of things that they did last week. Oh my God, CNN had a cow about this. But Trump, they got some answers. And so the answers aren't good. And Trump, I think, does a great job of defining what happened and what answers they're getting. So take a look at this. This is President Trump yesterday.
Actually, there was a lot of genius in sending it. We're trying to find out if people are working. And so we're sending a letter to people. Please tell us what you did last week. If people don't respond, it's very possible that there is no such person or they're not working.
Some of the agency heads instructed their employees not to respond because they were waiting on further guidance. But Elon Musk's tweet said a failure to respond would be taken as a resignation. So there's been a disconnect in communications. Yeah. Are you concerned at all about that?
No. That was done in a friendly manner. Only things such as perhaps Marco at State Department, where they have very confidential things, or the FBI, where they're working on confidential things. And they don't mean that in any way combatively with Elon. They're just saying there are some people that you don't want to really have them tell you what they're working on last week. But other than that, I think everyone thought it was a pretty ingenious idea. We have to find out where these people are. Who are they? And we said, if you don't respond, we assume you're not around.
And that holds, that stands.
And you're not getting paid anymore, too. So, we're doing a real job. And we just had a poll come out, I guess the Harvard poll, saying that it's massively popular what we're doing. So.
Yes, it is. It's massively popular. But CNN, nobody told CNN. CNN's still doing. There must be massive funding to CNN to push their lies. Massive funding, and they're so nasty. Nobody was worse than Jim Acosta, but boy, that girl that's there now that used to be at Fox is just toxic. And these panels that you see, they're wild too. But anyways, here's Kevin O'Leary, who's on CNN, who's great, and he puts these people in their place, almost laughs at them. These lefties that are saying, "Oh, it's so outrageous that Elon Musk asked people, write 5 things that you did last week. It's so outrageous. I love what Trump said. He said they might not even be real people. Maybe there's somebody in HR that's created a bunch of jobs and sucking up the money, sending it all to a bank account that they control. Who does? This government is there's so many lack of controls in this government. It's unbelievable. And I'm telling you, I'll say it. I'm an expert in processes and controls. I did it for decades and in the corporate world, and this stuff would never fly. I'm telling you what, if somebody bitched about having to write 5 bullets about what they did last week, we're going to have to take that to HR. This is ridiculous. We've got a job to do. We want to know what you're doing. And if nobody answers, then that would tell me they're not interested in keeping their job. They just are not interested. And that's great. That's the things we want to know. We want people in jobs that want the jobs, that are committed to the country in this case, or in the corporation, in the corporate world. But that's all we want. We want good, hard workers that are honest and are willing to work. That's it. Not asking that much. And I tell you what, it feels good to work. We're giving people a blessing by giving people and offering people great jobs. And I think it's a spiritual thing. There's something really rewarding about working for a living that God knows, that we all know. And so anyways, here's Kevin O'Leary going after CNN. It's great. Watch this.
Well, first of all, if they're not answering after 2 times requested, are they dead? I mean, remember, no one's ever tested it. I mean, it's not unreasonable to say, look, you work for the federal government. Here's the email we have on record for you. We've requested a response, and you haven't answered twice. I mean, what's wrong with that? The rational person would say, yeah, this is not okay. And
they're being told not to respond by some of their employers, though. Does that make a difference?
No, it doesn't. I don't think that many people are that worried about this because no one's ever tested this before. You've got billions of dollars going out to hundreds of people, thousands, tens of thousands of people, and nobody knows if they're A, alive, B, working, where are they, what are they doing. There's nothing wrong with this request. In the private sector, I do this every day. I ask, what are you doing? Where are you? I mean, are you alive? This is not unreasonable. The average person doesn't think this is unreasonable. So at the end of the day, okay, Elon Musk is controversial. I got it. And this whole Doge things, it's come on the scene and it's very electric and controversial. I got it. But if you're not working and nobody can contact you, what's wrong with asking? I see no wrong. I see no problem with this.
Kevin O'Leary's been great, just fantastic. He supports Trump, MAGA, and just common sense, which is if you got a job, are you working or not? Are you getting paid to do nothing? You're getting paid to stay home, getting paid to do another job. What are you exactly doing? I think it's a great question, especially with the attitude that most Americans have about government workers. And most Americans feel this way. There's been some polls out now, and they're with 80%. The numbers are huge. Americans don't want people to be sitting at home. I saw something that said that hundreds or thousands of individuals working for the government became millionaires over the last couple of years under the Biden regime. How's that happen? How does it happen? And so, something real fishy's going on, and we've already found trillions of dollars wasted. Trillions that we can't trace, trillions that went overseas during COVID. We don't know where. 70% of $1 trillion, 70%. Where'd it go? Did China grab all this? I wrote a piece this morning at joehoff.com. I'm laying that out. Is China the recipient of all this money? We've talked about USAID. It's $50 billion a year. We've listed maybe $3 billion. Where's the other $47 billion going? We still haven't gotten an answer to that. How many dollars are being funneled directly to China? That's my piece this morning. Thanks for sharing that, Chris. It's like, seriously, this is a real answer. And Rand Paul came up with a some information on that overnight. James Woods shared it on Twitter. It's what's going on here? Why is this money going? Where is this money going? And what is this? What is this that we're finding out that some money has landed in China? It's absolutely frightening. I think that's what I mentioned yesterday on the show. I was saying, I'll bet you we're going to find that billions of dollars has been floating to China, and nobody's stopping it. And there's some traitors in our government that are perhaps behind it. Here's Rand Paul's tweet. He says, speaking of which, buried in the foreign reports last year, he discovered something that we gave foreign aid to China. So the government is so damn dumb. It's literally borrowing money from China, giving it back to China while paying interest on it. So he's right. It's so insane. How much now is the question? Maybe it's not even if we're sending money to China, it's how much. So big question. Anyways, that's why Americans support this 100%. At least 80%. There's some idiots that don't know what's going on or don't care. Other than that, this is spot on. Maybe we can play that clip, that next clip from this St. Onge, this economist. He lays it out, man. We're on the right side. We're on the major right side, as always. Watch this.
The Department of Government Efficiency is rising in the polls with all-important swing voters. This despite left-wing media attacking Doge's anti-corruption crusade with everything they've got, and yet Doge is getting more popular among the American people, while Donald Trump is running about 10 points more popular than last time around, in case media wonders if they've lost their power to hypnotize the voters. In a recent video, I mentioned a December CBS poll that found support for Trump's economic policies is off the charts. 2/3 of Americans want regulations cut, 2/3 want oil drilling expanded, and here's where Doge comes in. 3/4 of Americans want government spending cut, while 3/4 also want tax cuts. Those go hand in hand. Now, keep in mind that was all before Doge hit the corruption motherlode, the transgender comic books in Peru, the Politico subscriptions, the hundreds of millions to the Taliban Sesame Street in Iraq. Now, the media had been running interference, trotting out their knee-jerk, without evidence line to claim Elon is making it all up. Of course, this is hilarious considering the federal government itself, as in the CBO and GAO, have long estimated up to $500 billion in waste and fraud. Toss in another $400 billion in fraud during COVID between PPP and ERTC handouts. Roughly 1/3 of the EITC, which goes to the working poor, is estimated fraud. This was all long before Elon, who is now finding the receipts, the evidence for the New York Times. When Americans are watching, while manipulated polls try and manufacture anti-Doge rage, a recent CBS poll says nearly 3/4 of American voters want Elon to have, quote, influence over government operations and spending. This includes 90% of Republican voters and even a majority of Democrats. Meanwhile, left-wing media was in a panic last week as Axios ran a focus group in Arizona that found swing voters overwhelmingly approve of Doge. In fact, it had 80% support, even with the 24/7 gaslighting from our apparently deep state-funded media. Now, this all bodes well for Doge's mission of cutting federal spending, hence cutting inflation, getting rid of mandates and regulations so the economy can grow, and ending the corruption that funds the radical left. So what's next? Brought to you by Unchained.com. A number of Democrat strategists have warned that Dems are committing political suicide by fighting Doge instead of joining it. But they have to defend the industrial-scale corruption because it's what runs their entire operation. The radical activists, the nationwide riots, the lawfare industrial complex, the billionaires pawning unicorn farts. All of it your tax dollars. In short, the Democrat Party has become protected by corrupt media for so long, it has lost touch with voters and aligned itself with donors, now finds itself defending the indefensible. There's still a big chunk of the country hypnotized by legacy media, but when 3/4 support Doge, the spell is breaking. There was a time when the Democrat Party was rational. Bill Clinton, for example, ran on strong border security, getting the able-bodied off welfare, and reducing government spending to balance the budget, which are all very popular among actual voters. Alas, the party today is unrecognizable. turned into a vehicle to defend corruption, illegals, activists, and Ukraine while leaving North Carolina, Florida, and America's inner cities to die. Now, sane Dems are already flipping to Trump. In fact, some of them are named Kennedy, Rogan, and Elon. But the party needs another couple shellackings before it sobers up and starts listening to voters again. A new episode of the podcast just dropped, rounding up all of last week's.
Fantastic. Fantastic. He just lays it out, doesn't he? That's fantastic. 75%. That's 3 out of 4 people are saying, yeah, let's do Doge. Let's do it. Who would not say that? You know, seriously, you've got to be so mind warped. I just don't even understand why you would not want this. This is not an option in the corporate world. This is a mandate. We have to watch every penny. We have to do things that are profitable. We don't hire people to sit around or to stay at home. Everything has to be well controlled. The numbers have to be perfect. Everything. It's fantasy land what we're living with here. It's insane. It's just insane. And then these Democrats that now are suddenly, and the big media, they're suddenly so worried for these government workers that are taking an 8-month buyout, by the way, which is unheard of in the corporate world, unless you're a senior executive or something, CEO, unheard of. They're complaining these poor people are only getting that. Now, let's take a flashback and look at what Jen Psaki said when all these people working on oil rigs to help the American economy grow were let go by Biden immediately, by the Biden regime and their attacks on this great country. Listen to how she handled that and her empathy for those workers.
Thank you, Jen. I do have a question on COVID, but first on energy. When is it that the Biden administration is going to let the thousands of fossil fuel industry workers, whether it's pipeline workers or construction workers, who are either out of work or will soon be out of work because of a Biden EO, when it is and where it is that they can go for their green job? And that is something the administration has promised. There is now a gap. So I'm just curious when that happens, when those people can count on that.
Well, I'd certainly welcome you to present your data of all the thousands and thousands of people who won't be getting a green job. Maybe next time you're here, you can present that.
But you said that they would be getting green jobs, so I'm just asking when that happens. Richard Trumka, who is a friend, longtime friend of Joe Biden, says about that day one Keystone EO, he says, I wish he, the president, had paired that more carefully with the thing that he did second by saying, here's where we are creating the jobs. So there's partial evidence from Richard Trumka.
Well, you didn't include all of his interview. Would you like to include the rest?
So how about this? The Laborers International Union of North America said the Keystone decision will cost 1,000 existing union jobs and 10,000 projected construction jobs.
Well, what Mr. Trumka also indicated in the same interview was that President Biden has proposed a climate plan with transformative investments in infrastructure and laid out a plan that will not only create millions of good union jobs, but also help tackle the climate crisis. And as the president has indicated when he gave his primetime address to talk about the American Rescue Plan, he talked about his plans to also put forward a jobs plan in the weeks or months following. And he has every plan to do exactly that.
But there are people living paycheck to paycheck. There are now people out of jobs once the Keystone Pipeline stopped construction. It's been 12 days since Gina McCarthy and John Kerry were here, and it's been 19 days since that EO. So what are these people who need money now? When do they get their green job?
Well, the president and many Democrats and Republicans in Congress believe that investment in infrastructure, building infrastructure that's in our national interests and that boosts the U.S. economy, creates good-paying union jobs here in America and advances our climate and clean energy goals are something that we can certainly work on doing together. And he has every plan to share more about his details of that plan in the weeks ahead.
Wasn't that something? Jesus, wasn't that something? Do you see the difference between the Biden regime and the Trump regime? That was all lies. They didn't have any green jobs. There was nothing there. It's all destruction of America. Let's buy more windmills from China. Let's put them up, kill birds and whales and everybody else. It's insanity. Everything was insanity with these people. No empathy. They didn't care about oil workers that lost their job. They didn't care. Did you see that? Did she say, gosh, We're doing the best we can to get these guys a job. We got people out there lining up. We've got positions ready, blah, blah, blah. What a lie. What a lie, that whole regime. It's like you're just sitting there. It had to be so frustrating for people to sit in that room. She was really, really nasty. She's a real dishonest person. Really, really dishonest. But then again, so is our whole media. And here's a piece to remind us of how we're being brainwashed. If you haven't figured it out already, just a great piece came out a few years back. I think Gateway Pundit was the first to put it up, by the way. And I think it's just perfect. This is the media that the Mockingbird media that we've been forced to listen to. People like Jen Psaki and CNN, and they had their narratives and they pushed it, and it's disgusting. And let's hope that this media gets destroyed once they can't. Nobody's funneling money to them anymore. Millions of dollars to these outfits. Anyways, watch this.
Hi, I'm Fox San Antonio's Jessica Headley.
And I'm Ryan Wolf.
Our greatest responsibility is to serve our Treasure Valley communities,
the El Paso, Las Cruces communities,
Eastern Iowa communities,
Mid-Michigan communities.
We are extremely proud of the quality, balanced journalism that CBS 4 News produces.
But
we are concerned about the trouble and trying to get responsible, one-sided news stories plaguing our country.
The sharing of biased and false news has become all too common on social media. More alarming, some media outlets publish these same fake stories without checking facts first.
The sharing of biased and false
news has become all too common on social media.
More alarming, some media outlets publish these same simply aren't true without checking facts first.
Unfortunately, some members of the media use their platforms to push their own personal bias and agenda to control exactly what people think. And this is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
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 This is extremely dangerous to our democracy. This is extremely dangerous to our democracy. This is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
This is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
This is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
This is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
This is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
This is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
That's brilliant. Actually, when that came out, it was just brilliant because they're trying to push. Oh, there's this disinformation places like the Gateway Pod, disinformation place. Just this people in Europe, in the Parliament in the UK, were bragging about getting rid and knocking the Gateway Pundit off of Google Ads. Literally, this happened. This is this disinformation campaign. Really, a lot of these people were in Ukraine. I don't know if you go back to that Maidai situation. Who was there? Take a look. Take a look at some of these actors. Some real bad actors there that came over, and this whole disinformation campaign probably ran out of the UK. And how much is the UK involved? We need to ask that. How much is China? How much is the UK? How much has the US been abused by foreign influence? And they're the ones calling us fake news. I mean, it was so disgusting back then. We were sharing the truth, and that message is being sent out to the masses. And there's those 20% still today that, oh, I believe it. It's 100% right. It's all a lie. It's garbage. So unbelievable stuff. Hopefully, we'll get the truth back here soon. And with Trump and Elon and this great team that's being assembled, I have a lot of hope that we do. We've got a lot of work to do, though. So anyways, we're going to take a quick break here, and we'll be right back on the Joe Hoff Show. Hi, this is Joe Hoff. Are you looking for monthly income without the risk of stocks? Here's something you won't hear about on CNBC. This unique way to collect royalties directly from America's most productive oil fields. No exploring, drilling, or operational headaches. You simply collect checks month after month. The best part? You can get started with just $25 through any brokerage account. The Oxford Club's chief income strategist, Mark Lechtenfeld, breaks down what he believes is the #1 loyalty play for 2025. Visit HoftOilBoom.com now to learn more. That's HoftOilBoom.com, HoftOilBoom.com. Stop buying oil stocks and start collecting oil royalty checks now instead.
In every thread, in every stitch, Honor-Bound USA weaves the fabric of the American spirit. It's not just apparel, it's a testament to God, family, and country. At Honor-Bound USA, we're a family of patriots who put our faith, family, and America first. When you visit our website, you'll find a line of products that embody our commitment to pray, stand, speak, and act.
As the official site for the Untamed podcast, all of our products proclaim speaking the truth with courage.
We also have the powerful documentary from Professor David Clements, Let My People Go. Identify yourself as one of the few who are willing to stand for what they believe in. Join the Honor-Bound USA family today. Wear it as a badge of honor, commitment to the values that shape us, and a pledge to the bright future we will build together. Because when you're honor-bound, you're not just wearing a brand, you're embodying a lifestyle.
Hi, I'm Joe, Supreme Leader of DCF. What is DCF, you ask? We're the best damn sandwich shop in the universe. Do we sell hoagies? Well, we're DCF, and the F doesn't stand for hoagies. We got 9mm sandwiches, we got beastly baguettes, and we toast buns like no other. Looking for training on bun safety? We got you covered, and our ranges are the best place to test out your new Not sandwich. So get your buns out, cause the sun's out, and let's party! We're not actually a sandwich shop.
That was what we had to respond to Chris during the break here. So anyways, keep you wanting to know what's happening during the break. Really not that much, but are you talking to me? So anyways, got a good friend on the show today, great guest, and got a lot to talk about, and he knows a lot. So he's been he's on that other side of the mainstream media, the good guys. He's one of the great guys, and he's been doing some great work over the past many years. And so without further ado, let me welcome to the Joe Hoff Show, L. Todd Wood. Welcome.
Thanks for having me on, Joe. I always love to come on. You're one of the guys who knows a lot, so I enjoy talking with you.
Well, thanks. Thanks a lot. Yeah. Yeah. You talking to me? Really? No, thanks. No, thanks a lot. Yeah, lots going on. So much going on. Why don't we start off? Tell us a little bit about yourself, your history, and where you're at today.
Yeah, sure. Well, I graduated from the Air Force Academy. I flew special operations helicopters for 8 years, flying SEAL Team 6 and Delta Force around. Then I left, went to Wall Street for almost 20 years, traded emerging market bonds. Then I got into the media business. John Solomon asked me to come write for him at the Washington Times, which I was focused on Eastern Europe for a few years. And I just realized nobody knew what was going on over there in the U.S. And this was 2015 timeframe. So we built a team in Ukraine and in Eastern Europe. And little did I know that would become the center of the political universe down the road a few years. And so that became very helpful to us. We ended up testifying in front of the House Oversight Committee attorneys on some of the corruption going on over there, because we knew what was going on. And so we've, had people in the Middle East, and we're growing. I call it Reuters without the spin. CDM.press is 13 sites. We're adding our 14th sites in Asia soon. We're building it now. Have a team on the ground throughout Asia. So we're excited. We're just trying to build a truthful news organization that people can go to and trust, and credibility, and not a lot of this narrative blob spin that you see out there now.
Yeah, especially overseas. I lived in Hong Kong, as you know, maybe for 10 years, and was a corporate exec over there, and lots of CNN and BBC, and you just the news is just toxic, and it's sad because there's great people over there, smart people, but they're getting fed this stuff. I go to board dinners and I'd be like, I was like the character because I love Trump and they all knew it. They kind of egged me on a little bit too, but they also wanted to know what's going on. I'd always tell them stuff that they had no idea that was going on. I was
Yeah.
helping out Jim at the Gateway Pundit at that time. So yeah, it's needed. Where in Asia are you at now?
Well, the site is going to be hosted in the U.S., but we have reporters in which we're building now. Obviously, some in China, we can't tell who they are, but also in Thailand, in India, Korea. So we're going to have a real good Asia focus, and I'm excited to talk about that. It's not quite baked yet, but we're going to get it out soon.
That's great. No, that's great. How about Australia? You guys down there yet or no?
Not yet. We have 7 papers in the U.S. We have a military channel, armedforces.press. We have CDM Espanol. We have 1 in the Middle East, 2 in Europe, in the Balkans, and in Eastern Europe. And then the main site, CDM, that everything kind of feeds into like a funnel. If it's, worth a national perspective. If it's a story about a school board meeting in Maryland, it's going to stay on the Maryland paper. But if it's big enough, it'll funnel up into the top site, and we'll just add that Asia flow into it. But we're not in Australia yet. We are talking about a UK site, and maybe that'll be more kind of like a Five Eyes site that focuses on the countries, the Commonwealth. But we're not quite there yet. I do have reporters in the UK. It's pretty sporty over there, to tell the truth. Right now, you can get put in jail pretty quick.
Well, that's true. That's true, and pretty scary, really, quite frankly. I question the influence that UK has on our country still to this day.
Sure, you're right.
Look at as I was writing about Russia collusion, I can remember. Well, wait a minute here. We're talking about Russia being the bad guy, but every incident here is in the UK or with somebody from the Ukraine, UK, like Steel or whatever.
Yeah.
And
well, you're right about that. There's strategic SCL, Strategic Communications Labs, which is a MI6 operation to develop narratives in the media and in social media. You had Cambridge Analytica. All of that is being influenced by somebody behind the scenes over there against the U.S. I mean, Ukraine. My gosh, look at what's going on over there with Boris Johnson and Starmer and all of them just pushing that war and over, even to this day. So you're correct on that. UK involvement.
Yeah, and isn't that somehow they always said, "Oh, it was so terrible what Trump did with Cambridge Analytica, or however you say that name." I was like, "Wait a minute, that's nothing that they did compared to what the left was doing." I just showed that clip where it's like 20 people all saying the same words, that came out a couple of years ago. I just showed that moments ago. It's like it's still priceless. That's the poor 20% we have in the U.S. today that just watches that and believes it. And it's sad because
it is sad.
I know people in that bucket, and you're like, come on, get out of that. It's deadly. I think the last 4 years they've destroyed this country totally. And this stuff in Ukraine, you mentioned that. You've got quite some expertise there. Did you live there for a while?
I did, not like full time, but I was when I left Wall Street in 2011. I had studied Russian at the Air Force Academy. I had traded emerging market debt all over Eastern Europe. I had studied Russian weapon systems in the military. So I had kind of a natural interest in that area. And so I started traveling all over, writing for different papers. I wrote for Novaya Vremya in Kiev. I wrote for the Moscow Times. I wrote for some others in that area. And this was before all the big, Russian hysteria that happened. But then literally the Washington Times asked me to come to a conference in South Korea. And I met your brother there, actually. I think he was there, maybe not there, but I met your brother somewhere at one of those conferences. But, they wanted me to talk about media and national security. And then John said, why don't you write a column for us? So I wrote Behind the Curtain for the Washington Times for several years. And then, like I said, I realized nobody knew what was going on up there. So I said, I got to start something. So we started our Eastern European site. It's called Tsarism.com, just really the former Soviet Tsarist empire, which goes from San Francisco all the way to Poland. If there's a Fort Rus in San Francisco that used to be owned by the Tsarist Russians. So people just don't know how big that was. And so that started that, and then it just morphed into bigger and bigger and bigger. Then we realized it needed to be something more global. And that's when CDM.press was started. We have a lot of video content. We're doing a lot of shows. CDTV is growing. Like everybody, we're trying to bust through the censorship and the bubble, if you will, but we're getting there.
Yeah. Well, and a big help is watching USAID get dismantled and finding
time.
out about how they're support. That's why I tell you what, does that piss you off or what when you think of the censorship we got,
Yeah.
getting attacked, shadow banned, doxxed. I got doxxed in Hong Kong.
Oh yeah. Oh
and,
yeah.
and just brutal stuff. Just sued. You go through all of this, and then and your advertisers are getting crushed. So then they
Yeah.
go elsewhere, and then we find out that at the same time they're censoring us. They're paying for it. We found out about the censorship industrial complex, and even more recently, and then we're finding out, but our competitors like New York Times and Politico and BBC and Reuters, all these entities, they're getting paid. They are
Big money.
big money,
Yeah.
millions,
Yeah.
millions.
Yeah.
And it's, and you talk about an unfair playing field. How, really the thing keeping us alive was, we wanted the truth.
Well,
We weren't
for me, it was my children and their future, right? I mean, because you're right, but what did it do, Joe? It made us a lot stronger. It made us resilient. It made us able to survive. So they really can't hurt us now. So they can, but I mean, we're not dependent on them to survive, to function, and that is a good thing. Although we just went back on YouTube after 5 years. We'll see how long it goes, how long they leave us there. But we have a lawsuit with Gateway against the Trusted News Initiative with RFK as our attorney. And it won't. They won't even put it on the docket in DC. It went from Louisiana to New York to DC, and the judge won't even put it on the. Won't even hear it. Won't even respond to the motions, from what I'm hearing. So, yeah, it's extremely frustrating because we should be made whole. I mean, literally millions of dollars. We should be made whole.
Amen. Absolutely. It's outrageous what the stuff we've had to go through. You're right. The bring up that case and more. It's been challenging, but I got to tell you, I have a lot of hope. But but the deep state's alive and well. I had some pieces earlier in the show today too, just about how the FBI's reportedly destroying files right now, and how Trump's desk even looks like they maybe found something in it, some sort of spy device that they could, they were trying to get information there, and so. They're not dying. The deep state's fighting with all they got. Yeah.
They're alive and well, and it concerns me that they've kind of gone under the radar, right? You don't see the summer of love. You don't see the massive demonstrations, the violence, the burning and looting in cities. So it makes you wonder, what's the plan going forward, right? Are they just trying to survive, or are they actually getting hammered and they're just, recoiling? Or my sense is that they've thought this through and war gamed it, and they have a plan. So we have to be vigilant.
Sure.
And my gosh, stay involved. I mean, at the local level, all the way up, and support free media, for goodness sakes. Because that's the only way we get freedom, is to have people understand the truth.
Yeah, and really, literally support free media. I mean, I know there's a lot of small businesses going under right now. I've seen, just because of the economy and the COVID and all. Since COVID, it's just been so destructive to so many people. But we got to stick together, support our local communities, as well as the new media like you and me. So you were over in Ukraine. What was so here's the theory. Mike Benz has come out with some great information. I'm sure you've seen it. He says that basically Ukraine, the whole thing behind it was the oil and gas. There was a fight for oil and gas, and who was going to run European, provide Europe that energy. And his theory is that the CIA wanted that to be Ukraine, and they basically stepped in and started taking it over. You get Hunter Biden on the Burisma and these other companies, and then they make up the Russia collusion sham to demonize Russia. What's your thoughts on all that?
I think all of this has multi levels. I think that's definitely one level. I had a source tell me that one, they had FBI agents taking $5 million bribes in Ukraine, and they had were sitting in the one guy told me sat in the room when Biden and one of the oligarchs made a deal on exactly what you're talking about, which was the oil and gas and harnessing that. I also think it was a push to push Russia and China's arms, so that, and that maybe is China driven, so they wouldn't focus on the east like we're doing now. So I'm not sure, but I think there's multi levels. But I agree with you.
Yeah, I talked to George Papadopoulos on the
Mhm.
show too. Asked him about that, just because he was. I'd read something where he was pushing energy coming out of the Middle East. Israel, as a matter of fact, had found some oil in the Mediterranean, and I asked him, "Do you think he was targeted not just because he'd had this brief encounter with President Trump, but because of his activities trying to help Israel build this link to Europe with that energy down near Israel?" He said he definitely's thought about that. And so
Yeah. I didn't think Putin would invade past the Donbass, so I was a little surprised. But I don't think the West has to understand. Really, I tell people, look, Putin, he's killed journalists, he's killed Boris Nemtsov right outside the Kremlin. But you have to understand the history. You don't have to agree with them, but you have to understand their view of the world in order to function in this world effectively. Because we haven't been functioning effectively for the last 5 years or so. But I was there during the invasion. I was in the Hotel Kiev or Hotel Ukraine right there in Kiev. My son calls me at 7:30 in the morning. He was like, "Dad, you got to get out. Strategic airstrike's coming." So I called one of my team members. We just drove west for 2 days to Venetia. Russian paratroopers coming down outside the city, cruise missiles. And I was in a bomb shelter for a week, and then they drove me to the border, and I walked across the Moldovan border. Just fascinating time, but so I have nothing against Ukrainians, but I do think in fact, I had a Ukrainian refugee family in my house for 6 months afterwards. And I just, after the war started, the second phase in 22, I just think we have to understand our role in this and how we pushed for this war, which really has done nothing for Ukraine. It's been depopulated, millions of people maimed or killed, their towns destroyed. I mean, Ukraine is not better for this war. Believe me, there should have been a peace deal in 16, and I think Trump knows that.
Yeah, I think so. And it's pretty clear. And I'm glad, what do you think? Well, let me ask you, what do you think of him not really engaging Zelensky in any peace talks right now?
Zelensky is not working for the people of Ukraine. He's like Obama. He's like Biden. He's like, Macron, Starmer. They're working for somebody else. They're not working for their own people. So I completely support President Trump in the way he's handling this. The Europeans, too. Most of them don't want peace. They want the war to look at them. They're all flocking to Kiev to saying they're going to support Zelensky to fight Russia continually, even if the U.S. pulls out. They don't have the ability to do that, but they're not. I know Zelensky is not working for the people. I know he allowed this war to happen. It could have been solved, and the way they're doing the mobilization in Ukraine, where they're just pulling kids off the street or young guys. They give them 2 days of training, and they end up at the front, and the average lifespan is like 4 hours. So they're killing thousands. It's a meat grinder, just a killing machine on both sides. The Russians are suffering just as well, and they're bringing. I don't think Putin can do another mobilization because the people of Russians. So he's bringing in Yemenis and North Koreans and everybody else to do the fighting because he knows he can't put his people through that again. But Ukraine's been depopulated. I mean, the population's cut in half, and it's not going to recover to where it was. That's just a fact.
That's just amazing. And a lot of Ukrainians here in the U.S. now.
Yeah.
I know a family elderly couple that came over. Their daughter was here, so they were living with her now. And I'm sure but they had to leave their farm and all that.
Well, that's a good point. The farming, because they did what was called land reform in Ukraine, where they basically took the land from the old Russian serfs that were farming it, those generations of families. And they, guess what? They allowed it to be sold to corporate, America and corporate Europe. And so that is also, it's not just the gas, it's also the farmland that they're after. But no, I do believe it's a natural resource play, in addition to a global geopolitical play, I think, by China to force us to deplete our weapon systems, to push Russia over into China and take our focus off China. And I think Trump, thankfully, is reversing that.
Yeah, I think so too. You mentioned you're now in Asia. What are your concerns over there?
China is collapsing. My concern mainly is that they're going to lash out and start, and the CCP, I should say, it's not the Chinese people. I think they could lash out, and this is an unrestricted, undeclared war. I mean, from the fentanyl to the border to the vaccine development to the Ukraine war to the Belt and Road Initiative, everything they're doing, the cultural rot in our society. I think it's all been a long-term plan to take us down, the destruction of religion. I mean, Zelensky is destroying Christianity in Ukraine. I think he's doing that for somebody else. It's not for Ukrainian people. You have churches being stolen, burned. He stood up this new, church, which is not the old Ukrainian Orthodox Church. And I actually just had a meeting in D.C. with the attorney who's Jewish, who is representing the Ukrainian Orthodox Church. And he's like, I got priests being beaten who are jailed and tortured in prison. I have parishioners meeting in the woods to have their church services. So it's horrific. They've taken the churches from these people where everybody was baptized, in Ukraine that was in the Orthodox Church. So it's really horrific. I think the attack on Christianity is a big part of this CCP op. So I'm worried that they're really pushing for an unrestricted war against us, and that may go kinetic at some point. And hopefully Trump has stepped in time. We'll see, but we got to fight. I interviewed G. Van Fleet yesterday. If you haven't had her, you should have her on your show. Just fantastic insight from somebody who grew up under Chinese communism and really has a way of, expressing the danger, I should say.
Well, I lived in Hong Kong for about 10 years, and I can remember I was there when Trump won and was very happy. And then immediately started seeing this Russia collusion stuff. And I remember seeing Comey in front of the Senate, and I'm overseas. I'm seeing this. I go, well, he doesn't want Trump to win. That's what was hitting me. It's like he's wanting to get rid of Trump. It took me a half an hour watching that Senate hearing. I'm like, God, this is frightening. And I was so frustrated. And that's when I really was writing at the Gateway Pundit, as part-time as just to help, and when I could see some of this stuff. One thing that I saw over there was how over the next 4 years under Trump crushed China economically.
Definitely.
And you could see it in Hong Kong. They would come across the border in just lots of Chinese every weekend. These stores, it's like Christmas every day. The shopping was unbelievable, and the people would take these goods back to China, and then also there was a lot of people crossing the border with cash, trying to buy a place in Hong Kong with Chinese renminbi, because that's one way they could get their money out of China, because it was I heard Bannon say this years ago. It was like, if people could, if they opened the borders, that money would be out of there in a day. Everybody'd get their money out of there. They don't trust the economy there, and nor should they. And then what happened was all this building, which was 24% of their GDP, started to crash. And what I saw was what we had in 2008. Just they overbuilt. There's people in these places, but not enough. A lot of these buildings really were empty. I took some pictures of these huge facilities in the middle of China, empty, huge, like condos. It's like, how did they ever think they were going to fill these for the price they were asking? And then that all went off balance sheet. And all this is in 2019. And Trump's pushing them, and they wouldn't come to an agreement. So he pushed them even harder with tariffs. And so they lowered their prices so it wouldn't affect their sales in the U.S. Well, then that hurt their companies because the U.S. dollar was stronger than the Chinese renminbi, and that hurt them even worse. These U.S. dollar loans they had were even more expensive. So everything was a nightmare for China. And then all of a sudden we saw COVID. And I remember
a bioweapon. Yeah, it was a bioweapon
at the time. Yep. If there was a reason that they did this intentionally, it was because Trump was crushing them economically. And I don't think, and you're right, they haven't recovered. Their economy is not. It's not.
It's a Ponzi scheme. It's as you say, the real estate. I mean, some of this collateral has been pledged like 10 times or more. So, once the dominoes start falling, I mean, they're going to prop it up as long as they can. I think their debt to GDP is like 300% or something like that. Yeah. Maybe not counting the municipal loans and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So it's a mess, and they don't have a consumer economy. They can't grow their way out of it. They're an export economy, and we have all the leverage. Trump's exactly right. So, I hope we don't get in a conflict with China. I hope Trump can thread that needle, but I see that as the main danger. Look, Russia is not an existential threat conventionally to NATO. They can't even take Donbass. So why are we worried about them invading Poland? I mean, that's just a pipe dream. For the Kremlin doesn't have the force structure, although they're a lot stronger than they were before the war. They built up their industrial capacity. We've made them into a stronger military force, but I don't think they're an existential threat to Europe. They are nuclear wise, but why would they want to do that? I mean, that's like a self-defense last resort measure. So, but China is a threat. They are collapsing. I hope Trump is pulling Russia away from China, re-engaging, because if we can, build some kind of alliance or at least economic partnership with Russia, that really weakens China even further.
Yeah. Did you see? I don't know if you saw this yet. Today, Trump comes out and says that he is, they're working on an agreement with Ukraine. They expect something soon. And he says, we're working also on something with Russia, which will be economically beneficial to the U.S. as well. So, and it sounds really good. I don't think Trump, they put him in a terrible position his first term where he couldn't befriend Putin because then they would accuse him of being a, a Russian puppet, which was terrible. This time, I don't think he gives a damn. He's going to do what's right. And it looks
I
like
think you're right.
he's moving in the right direction here. And maybe it looks pretty, I think Putin will trust Trump.
I think they have a working relationship. Yeah, I agree with you. I think they both went through the ringer. They both have faced this USAID blob machine. And I mean, Putin's had people assassinated in his capital city. He's been drone attacks in Moscow. He's got a lot of death from the war. It's not popular with the Russian people. They want it to end as well. And both the Russians and Ukrainians, from a people perspective, are very warm, intelligent, interesting people if you get to know them. This killing is, and they're both of the same cloth. I mean, they came from Kiev Rus. That whole society came out of there. So this just needs to end. It's killing for the sake of killing, and it keeps me up at night. I don't want American boys and girls over there.
No, that's insane. And and then you see the people that are, we even saw some senators go over there recently, Lindsey Graham and Joni Ernst and some Dems, White House and others. It's like, what are you guys doing there? This is after Trump's trying to talk about, bringing peace. I thought that was great because it just really shows who these people are, and Trump's learning a lot.
You're having, as you said, a kind of a parting of the ways. You can see who's who. And it's very interesting. And I think you're going to all find out that this money going to Ukraine was coming back into their coffers through WinRed, Act Blue, all of that stuff, Kemp to Tom Cotton to, John Ossoff, all of them, it's all, we've outlined it all. I mean, all the smurfing, we've reported it for 2 years. Interesting. Nobody's talking about it. You can put up a chart that shows all the smurfing in Tom Cotton's campaign, which we did a few days ago. Crickets. It's amazing to watch.
Yeah, you're right. I remember putting up. I'm gonna say this. You may disagree, but I put up I think the first piece on the smurfing. There's a guy named Chris.
I know Chris well. Yeah.
You know Chris? Yeah, he was in Florida. He sent me this, and I'm like, and I looked at it and I go, this makes sense. I could tie some of the numbers, use my audience skill set and stuff, and I'm like, yeah, I think this, and I put it up, and it was a little scary, but what he had identified was in the special election in Georgia with that minister, whatever his name is.
Yeah, Raphael Warnock.
Yeah, whatever. Yeah, like he's a minister or whatever. There's people in DC, not DC, but Washington State, giving like 10 donations a day of $100 and $1 or $89, whatever it might be, all day long to that election.
Oh yeah.
And it's like, this doesn't make sense. And they're all elderly, or at least none of them had a job. And then we saw James O'Keefe's,
some of them don't even exist. But what I find is, if you want to know who's really for a free country and who's taking money from the other side, look at who reports that stuff and who doesn't. It's very simple right now. I mean, where is the stuff being shown and where is it not? Who will not talk about the smurfing? And it may be on people you think are on our team, but if they're not talking about this election fraud and money laundering, then they're either compromised or they're taking money not to, in my opinion.
No, it's a big deal. It's a huge deal. It's like it's money laundering. They break it down to small amounts. We found that one entity, GBI Strategies in Michigan, that was setting up people on voter rolls, and they had this garbage bags full of these prepaid cards, and you're like, is that how they're paying these people, the crooked ones, for adding these names to the system and flushing these donations through to the politicians? I'm not sure, but that makes sense to me.
Yeah.
Another thing we wrote about when Ukraine fell, it wasn't really when Ukraine, anything there per se, it was with that SBF and FTX. So Sam Bankman-Fried, when he went under and bankrupted FTX, we started looking into that, and we find out that there's money that's being exchanged to crypto in Ukraine through FTX. And then we're thinking, well, it's being funneled back to the US through crypto. It'd be almost impossible to track that, because you could, in FTX, you could buy this crypto, exchange it to that crypto and that one, and then come out in US dollars. And it'd be really difficult to track that. And I thought that's probably their scheme. We found out SBF had a conference call with Biden every week. It's like, what's going on?
Well, I hope we get, I want to get those JFK files. I want to get the Epstein files, but I also want all this to come out because it's massive organized crime is what we've called it. And we're not going to have a free future. Our kids and grandkids won't, unless we deal with this. So free media, it's on our shoulders to do it, because nobody else is going to do it.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. Yeah, we're seeing how CNN and MSNBC and other, really CBS, how they're reacting to it. It's terrible. They're lying.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
yeah, totally.
Well, hey, Todd, love to have you back anytime, man. Great catching up. You've got you talk about some knowledge and worldly and all that. It's great talking to you. So best of luck. How can people reach out to you and follow you?
At L Todd Wood on X. Support me there. Follow me there. I lost a couple 100,000 followers back in 2020, so I haven't really got those back. So would love to rebuild that. But cdm.press, just put us in your daily scan. Give us the best way you can help us is give us a few clicks every day, and put that on a regular basis, and that will really help us going forward. So thank you, Joe.
No, thank you. It's great having you here. Well done, and keep up the great work. You're doing
All
great
right,
work.
Take
Thank
care.
you.
Bye.
And we'll be back tomorrow on the Joe Hoff Show with another great guest. Thanks so much for L. Todd Wood. Join us today, and we'll catch up then. Thank you.